and we're happy to be hosting this event this evening, and thank you for everyone for coming out. First of all, I would like to recognize some folks who have decided to join us this evening, including some folks from basically across the street here at the General Assembly. First, Senate Minority Leader Nikki Setzler from Lexington County. Senate Education Committee Chairman Greg Hembry from Horry County. We have a few superintendents in the audience tonight. We have Dr. Craig Weatherspoon from Richland 1. Dr. Ronald Epps, who's retired superintendent from Richland 1. Dr. Gregory McCord from Marlborough County. And Dr. Franklin Foster from Colleton County. And just in this time, have I missed any lawmakers, superintendents who came in since I've been here? Raise your hand if I missed you. Yes.
Mayor Davis,
thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. Appreciate that. Well, wonderful. Next, I want to introduce our Superintendent of Education, our State Superintendent of Education. She just won her second term in office, Molly Spearman. She has been a teacher, a principal, a lawmaker, and director of the Association for Education Administrators. That's, I think, really a mouthful, including the job that she holds now. And Molly Spearman, please.
Good evening, everybody. A special thank you for being here tonight, showing your interest in our public education system, and a real tribute to the reporters and folks at the Charleston Post and Courier for this wonderful work that you've done. I've got 5 minutes to share with you some thoughts. I can't cover everything that I have learned over my years of working in education in this state, but really what I've learned and observed and tried to do while I've been in office as state superintendent, and what we want to try and accomplish over these next 4 years. It's quite a challenge. We all want our beloved state to continue the tremendous growth and prosperity we've witnessed and enjoyed over the past years, but to ensure these opportunities continue and that we have the resources for all of our citizens, we must make bold decisions. Many decisions that we have refused to face, and quite frankly have kicked down the road for a long time. Prosperity cannot come for all unless every student and adult in South Carolina, no matter where they live, have high quality, not minimally adequate, but high quality educational opportunities available. Across South Carolina, there are schools and classrooms where students are receiving world-class opportunities to build on their pathways to meet the profile of the graduate. Just this past year, we went from 9,629 industry credentials in the 16-17 school year to over 22,000 students with industry credentials. We know that if students are involved in CATE programs, they have a 98% graduation rate. But sadly, as I travel the state, and you know, not all of our students have the opportunities they deserve. We must look at the whole child, whole community approach going forward. Over the past 10 years, in some rural areas, some of our school districts have lost up to 40% of their student population, while their elected board members, administrators in some districts sat idly by, allowing administrative costs and staffing to increase. In our most efficient districts, the cost per student for district administration is around $1,300 per student. But in our smallest district, it's as high as $5,000 per student going into district administration. We have 13 districts in our state that have less than 1,500 students the size of some schools. In business, we would never allow this type of inefficiency. It's time for action. As part of my education reform package, we must require these small districts to begin implementation of shared services and consolidation plans. This will free up dollars for resources in the classroom, but more importantly, build a higher level of administrative expertise for the future. We must overhaul and streamline our outdated education funding formulas. The EFA was written on this campus by some professors here. Dr. Roger Kirk was one in 1977 for the economy of South Carolina in 1977, when every community had a textile mill. It's been patched for over 40 years to meet changing needs. But we've got to be bold and create a new funding plan to serve the needs of South Carolina's communities. Over the past 3 years, you know that I have declared emergency status in 3 districts, Allendale, Williamsburg, and Timminsville 4. We've seen great growth in student achievement, better financial and program management. 6 of the 9 lowest performing schools in those school districts are no longer on the priority school list, and administrative costs have been radically reduced. But as these districts improve, we must prepare for the transition from state management back to local control. Under current law, it would mean that I turned the school district back over to the same board who saw the demise of the district. That will not happen and cannot happen, so we must have legislation to change that. The majority of school board members across our state give tirelessly of their time to support what is best for their students and communities, to protect their good work and ensure that all school board members are held to the same standard. These board members must be held to the same ethical standards as all other elected officials. We must provide state funding for school facilities and career centers in our rural areas. In order to participate, school districts must comply with a regional approach of shared services and work closely with their local technical colleges. These schools will be filled with current technology and career programs that will engage our students, raise the graduation rates, and align with the needs of the state's business and industry. New buildings are important, but they will not have an impact unless they're filled with great teachers and great principals. We owe our teachers so much. They spend every day dedicated to our children, the future of our state. They deserve a competitive salary. I look forward to working with the General Assembly. I've asked for a 5% teacher raise, and we'll take more, and we look forward to what we'll be able to work out in the next year. Along with competitive salaries, though, we must support our teachers with professional staff needed for the safety and mental health needs of our students. My goal, along with law enforcement and mental health experts, is to have a trained SRO officer and a mental health counselor in every school across the state by 2022. To ensure that every student in South Carolina is prepared for success after graduation, we cannot depend on teachers and educators alone. Parents must take an active role. Businesses, our churches, synagogues, volunteers must show up to the schools and say, how can I help? Just like you are doing tonight. Minimally adequate expectations can no longer be the standard. Together we must make 2019, 20 years since the Accountability Act was passed, the year that a high-quality education for all South Carolina students is the standard, no matter where they live. Thank you, and I'll look forward to participating in the questioning a little later.
Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Superintendent Spearman, for educating us on what it is that you're looking forward to in the next year as far as education reform and education funding from the State House. What I'd like to do next is introduce a couple of the reporters who helped put together the Minimally Adequate series. One of them is, I'm going to first introduce, is the Assistant Bureau Chief here at Columbia, Shauna Adcox. She has covered education in the state for over 15 years. She's worked with the Associated Press as well as with us at And second, I'd like to introduce Thad Moore, who is a Columbia native, who is a 2015 graduate of USC, who's been working with the posting career for a little over 2 years. He has now joined our investigative team, so I'm going to let them introduce tonight's panelists.
Thank you, Andy, and it's good to be back in Carolina. We've got a really great panel today, and I'd like to start by introducing Mr. Hayward John of Mellichamp Elementary in Orangeburg. And we have Dr. John Peterson, the Dean of USC's College of Education.
And Dr. Tracy Young Cooper and Mike Brennan, both of whom are former state board chairman of the State Board of Education, former EOS Education Oversight Committee, sorry, don't mean to use an acronym. Mr. Brennan is obviously the business background with BB&T, and Young Cooper has a varied education background. All right, well, I'll start with Dr. Young Cooper, because you have such a varied background. You've been a teacher, you've been an assistant principal, you've worked on the state level, you're now an administrator with Richland One. You've seen the gamut. So tell me what are the top challenges you see, and what's changed since you were a teacher?
Well, first of all, I'd like to start by thanking the Post and Courier for convening such a significant endeavor this evening. I'd like to underscore the comments of our Superintendent of Education. This is hard work, and it takes all of us pulling together across every sector of our state so that we make sure we move South Carolina forward. So I'm deeply honored to be here and a part of this panel of these distinguished panelists. I would like to first start off by saying I believe the silver bullet to many of the issues that were profiled in the documentary that we just viewed can be resolved by a caring, credentialed, and competent teacher in every classroom. So I'd like to start there as a sounding board, that I believe that we've got to put all of our investment as a state in making sure that we address very aggressively the teacher attrition issues that we are facing here locally, statewide, and nationally. Former First Lady Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy once said, if we bungle the raising of the children, nothing else that we do as a society matters. And I'd like to paraphrase that just briefly by saying, if we bungle the education of our children, nothing else matters. So I strongly believe that by having a teaching core that is strong and committed, and as Superintendent Spearman just mentioned, well-trained and prepared, I think we will be better postured as a state to address many of these issues. Since I left the classroom in 2002, sadly to say, nothing much has changed. We're still fighting issues of funding. We're still working with the community to try to make sure everybody is rolling up their sleeves to have a role in improving education across the state. And we continue to fight our national perception of public education here in South Carolina. We have come a long way, but I think we've got a lot of work to do. But the first thing I'd like to put forward and to challenge the legislators who are here and those who couldn't make it tonight is to make sure that we do all that we can do to invest in our teachers. They're on our front lines, they're ready and willing, but we've got to give them the backing that they need to make a difference in the lives of these children. And I strongly believe that's one of the silver bullets.
So on the focus, or on the topic of teachers, Mr. John, you obviously work with teachers every day and came up through a teaching background yourself. In your report card this year with the state, you wrote really candidly about sort of the challenges that your school faces in Orangeburg. And the sort of struggle you've had in finding highly trained teachers and retaining them once they get there. So talk about your background, how you became a teacher, and kind of the challenges your school's facing now.
Okay, thanks so much. And again, thanks Post and Courier. I am a call me Mr. In year 2000, I was named. All right. Yeah. Dr. Jones and Mr. Holton, who really watched me grow up. I grew up in a very low poverty area, raised a single parent mom to a father from Haiti who has about 20-something kids. Hey, don't talk about my daddy. All right, I heard that at home. But being raised in that type of situation, I had a mother who was crazy about me and making sure that I had what I needed to become an educator, to become a productive citizen. I never wanted to be a teacher. Never. I thought that was the last resort. I said, who does that? I remember my homecoming queen telling us in school, I want to be a teacher, and I laughed at her in her face in high school. And literally, I was like, what? Who does that? Our teachers hate their jobs, you know. So that's kind of how I perceived it, until I was bombarded with this idea that I could actually do for kids what my mom made sure was happening for me. Have a single parent, have a father figure. And that's when Call Me Mr. came into my picture. So that's what happened to me, is coming to being a low poverty area. I was able to give my kids now, because now as an elementary school principal, I am an educator and leader of kids who grew up just like me. And so I can tell you one thing, it is not cool to call our area a corridor of shame. That is not a good recruitment mechanism to recruit somebody into our area. So when you keep saying that, like, and I heard Governor yesterday, and it was really great hearing Governor's budget and hearing him say, we're going to do away with that label. I said, let's not wait for that budget to do away with that label. That's not something that we call ourselves. When you see that in the headlines, it's not good. If I could just be real, if our kids, one of my fourth grade students was sitting here right now, he or she would pretty much just say, it's not fair. It's not fair what's going on in our schools. I have a teacher that's here right now, Ms. Braylow from Teach for America, and you're not convinced to come to a school like ours. You're pretty much called to come to a school like ours. And so if we hammer on that, and so Dr. Jones, I was telling you earlier, it seems now the state is having a conversation in public what Call Me Mr. was having in private all the time. We literally talked about these things. As a 17-year-old freshman at Claflin University, I was given the video with all deliberate speed. And to hear that the state made an expectation for minimally adequate education, it hurt us. And so we had these deep discussions about what are we going to do about it. And so we really train our teachers about a movement in education. I think that's what this is all about, is starting a movement. And our lawmakers doing something big, because as a school in the poverty area, we have the lowest and we have the highest poverty rate in the district. But can I tell you that our kids face more than not having highly qualified teachers. We have some phenomenal teachers, but our kids also face trauma. I'm talking about, I'm invited to more funerals than I am invited to my kids' graduations, because our kids are facing crime. We have some of the highest crime rates in our area. And so what are we going to do for our kids like that? And then you come and you say, well, we don't get to learn in facilities that are fair. Our teachers have to learn in facilities where they have to kill 20, 30 something insects just before they get, and to have air equality and air quality issues in our building. It's just not fair. And so I think we have a lot of conversations, but it never feels like the conversations are going down to our kids, to our schools. They don't feel it. They don't feel what we're saying. And I think we need to do something about that. And so when I listened to Todd earlier, we need to do something like that. And so our school, we're very intentional about empowering our kids to know that they're not shameful. They're nothing to be ashamed of. And with that, we build teachers. That's why people like Teach for America and Call Me Mr. are doing everything they can to empower our scholars and be empowered to do that. But yeah, we feel it, and something does need to change. And we feel like we have some things that we learn in our school, and hopefully things like that can spread out.
Thank you. Now, continue on that teacher theme, but take it to the higher ed standpoint. Dr. Peterson, you've seen on a college level the teacher shortage crisis as the numbers go down of teachers coming into the profession and teachers exiting, abandoning the profession in droves. So tell us why that is. What are you hearing from students, and how can you, turn that around?
Sure. And actually, I think probably a principal or teachers themselves would do a much better job of explaining why they're leaving, quite honestly. I can give you my own thoughts, and certainly we know a lot about why they're learning, and I'll be the first one in line to say teachers need more pay. I mean, that's a bottom line. We need our teachers paid appropriately. We also need to be treated like professionals.
Amen.
What I tell our students all the time is, they are the architects of our futures. I mean, they are the architects of future minds, and I really appreciate what you said. I wholeheartedly agree with you. So what do? We see this huge, first of all, attrition in teachers leaving the profession. If you look at some of the data from Sarah, reported last year, I believe somewhere around 7,500 teachers left the classroom. What business or industry could function with that big of a turnover? Every teacher that leaves a classroom, regardless if they go from District A to District B, costs a district somewhere between, depends what you look at, $5,000, $12,000, $15,000 to replace that teacher. That's on the low side. So if you start looking at replacing 7,500 teachers and you start adding up that money, that's a lot of money. So one aspect, certainly, we've got to do a better job of changing the narrative, helping teachers and helping students understand what it means, like you did, about what it means to be a teacher. But we can't solve this problem just by recruitment alone. We've got to look at the retention side. We've got to look at what's going on in the schools. How do we change that metric? How do we really work with teachers? And one of the things that we've done, that we've invested in, simply because you know, we just felt here at USC that we had to take action. We weren't going to wait. But we said, you know, we need a support mechanism after our teachers, after our graduates enter the classroom. So we created a 3-year mentoring coaching program to really walk with those teachers through those first 3 years. We know up to 30% of teachers leave in those first 3 to 5 years. So, you know, it is something that we firmly believe in, that if we can change, even by 25 or 30% the retention rate, it's going to be a huge savings in terms of taxpayer money. Realistically, it costs about $2,500 for us to coach or mentor a teacher each year in the first 3 years. So I think all of that put together, it's got to be a holistic plan. It can't be just one entity. It can't be one thing. It really does have to be a holistic plan in terms of how we're going to turn this around. Not only recruit teachers, but also retain them, and that's a key.
So taking a little bit of a step back from, I guess, sort of teacher issues specifically, Mike, I wonder if you could sort of talk about your experience on the State Board of Education. You're also obviously very involved in the business community with BB&T. And I wonder if you could sort of talk about sort of the impact of all of this on the economy and on sort of developing the vitality of South Carolina, sort of how the workforce needs have changed for the state and how we're doing in that regard.
Thank you, Thad, and again, thank you to the Post and Courier for doing this. I think this is a seminal work that needed to be done in this state, and I hope that it gets some real legs and makes a difference in our state going forward, and that we really, for the first time, experience real transformation of public education. Because I contend that if all of us in this room were gathered here today and we decided we need a public education system in South Carolina, we would not create what we have today. We would fund our schools differently. We would pay our teachers differently. We would teach our children differently. Because what we've basically got, we've got strong remnants of what John Dewey created over 100 years ago, and that was a school system designed for an industrial age, for kids who were going to go work in a factory and didn't need high-order thinking skills, quite frankly. Well, this is a different day and a different time and a different economy. And getting back then to workforce, the workforce in this state is changing dramatically every day. I mean, there aren't many mills anymore. There isn't traditional kind of manufacturing. A lot of it's very advanced manufacturing, which requires a higher order of technical and thinking skills, quite frankly. And the reason business needs to be engaged in how we teach our children in this state, because at the end of the day, we consume what comes out of our schools. So we have to have skin in the game. We have to have a seat at the table. And my experience on the Education Oversight Committee and then the State Board of Education has been, it's become one of the real blessings in my life to have the opportunity to do this as a business guy. I'm concerned about 4 things primarily. One is getting early childhood education right. Number 2, we've got to think how we fund schools across this state. we've got to rethink the accountability system in this state. My sense is that we have overcooked accountability, we're over-testing, we spend too much time doing summative kind of testing. Could you imagine if I evaluated my associates at the bank and say, you know, you've had a great year, but you know, you took this test at the end of the year and you didn't do so well. So guess what? You're not getting a pay raise this year, or I'm going to demote you because of how you did on that test. And summative testing, I believe, can be very punitive. We need to have a higher order focus of formative testing. Because a lot of us in this room, guess what? When I was in school, I think I took a test called the Iowa test, maybe took the SAT or the ACT when I went to college, but it was my teacher's responsibility to determine if Mike Brennan had the skills to move on to the next grade. That was the test. It was the teacher's evaluation of me, and that's really all that mattered at the end of the day. The other issue is teachers. I'm thankful that the governor and superintendent have talked about 5% pay increases, which I think would sort of get us above the Southeast average. I've been a little more bold. If we're serious about it, why don't we pay our teachers above the national? Why can't South Carolina be the best at doing something in the nation and just say we want to be just a little bit better than everybody that hangs out in our neighborhood? Why don't we be the best in the nation? And the other piece of it is we've got to remove all the burden that we place on teachers. Teachers come out of Carolina and Clemson and Claflin and other schools that have colleges of education, and they want to teach. They don't want to do stuff. They don't want to be involved in bureaucracy. They don't want to check boxes. They don't want the superintendent and principals, you know, pushing things down to them to do. They just want to teach. Because you know what? They're not teaching widgets. They're teaching children who have souls. And there is no more valuable work that needs to go on in this state than teachers teaching the souls of our children. And they ought to be treated appropriately. They ought to be compensated appropriately. You know, because quite frankly, I've got entry-level associates who work at BB&T who do important jobs, but they don't require the kind of skills that teachers have. And our beginning salaries are much better than they are in the public education system. That is not right. Thank you.
I'd like to drill even more down on specifics, Dr. And let's continue with teachers. What can we do to recruit teachers to our high poverty areas? In Richmond 1, you have some wealthy areas and some high poverty areas. How do you get teachers, and obviously there are whole pockets of the state that are high poverty. How do we get them there?
Well, again, I think part of it is back to what Hayward was saying. Is you have to change the narrative. It's not the corridor of shame, and we've got to start changing the way that we reflect on this. I think also, again, some of the things that have already been said about teacher pay. The other thing is certainly I take the responsibility, and I know our faculty and staff do as well, that we continue to improve and think of ways in which we prepare teachers for teaching in rural areas, in urban areas. So that's, you know, fast on our mind. But in all, and a couple of thoughts. One, back to this idea, you know, I think it's irresponsible of us to think about preparing teachers in 120 credit hours over a period of 4 years, regardless of where they go to school, and expect them to walk out on day one fully prepared to take on those responsibilities. We need to do more post-graduation to support. Now, districts do all they can to help support teachers, and certainly principals do. But that's above and beyond everything else that's going on in these schools. There's no other profession I know of where we expect the professional to walk out on day one to be ready and prepared, 100% prepared and ready to take on that full responsibility. We wouldn't want a doctor to do it, a nurse, a lawyer, an architect. But yet that's what we expect of these teachers. We don't give them that support over a period of time to really develop and understand the culture and climate of where they are and who they're teaching. And so that doesn't matter if we're talking about a rural area of the state, economically challenged, or suburban, urban, wherever it would be. That's important.
How many teachers are you able to help through the Carolina Induction Program, and how might
Sure.
that be expanded?
Sure. Well, for one, we certainly see this as a model that we want to share and grow with other institutions across the state. We didn't call it Gamecocktail because we knew that that probably wouldn't be very popular in different places. So that's why we called it, Carolina Teacher Induction Program. And so, we want to work with others in helping implement this model. We want this to be something that is affordable, transportable, and certainly right now what we're working with is we're growing this slowly. We believe in think big, start small, and learn fast. And so this year we have 70, I believe, teacher induction students or new teachers that are in the program. We have been at this for a couple of years now. We have 100% retention. Some of the stories that we hear from these teachers, and just to paraphrase one, where I know in visiting with one of the coaches that this young teacher, first-year teacher, was in the classroom only about 8 or 9 weeks and made a phone call and said, I'm quitting the program because I don't have the time or energy. Well, instead of giving up on the teacher, the coach went to see this teacher, and here this young 20-something was crying at their desk, and just with that small amount of help about, they had 10 or 15 things that they just had to get done, but just couldn't figure out how they were going to get these things done. So the coach was able to help them through this, think through some of these issues. So it's effective. It's got to be that one-on-one handling of the situation. But also I would say this, in terms of, we're back to that question, that central question also, how do you recruit? These challenges we face in this state and other states are complex. And again, I'm going to say, and I'll say forever, teachers need to be respected, they need to be paid more. But it's much more complicated than just say paying teachers more is going to fix the challenges or fix the problems that we have. This is the social, emotional, it's the mental, it's the nutritional aspects. When we talk about safety, safety of kids, safety of teachers, this is a system that we're trying to change. And until we take this on as changing and transforming communities, we are not going to have the impact we want. I looked at my friend and colleague Mike Brennan and his indication of the commitment of business in this. Economic development, economic viability of communities is essential to making sure that we have high quality teachers in those communities. So it is a complex problem that's going to take all of us, and I say this a lot to our faculty, staff, and students, that if we want to go fast, we just run alone. But if we want to go far, we have to walk together, and that's what this is going to take. It's going to take every single one of us walking together to ensure that there's systematic change and transformation of communities to ensure that every child in this state has a high-quality education. Intelligence does not know zip code.
Well, and Dr., from a district perspective, and we have some legislators in the audience, so what can legislators do to help put those teachers in the classroom?
One of the things that they can do is to fully adopt the Committee on Education Retention and Recruitment Recommendations. Superintendent Spearman pulled together an ad hoc committee, and this committee did outstanding work developing 29 recommendations that have been placed and given to legislators on the House and the Senate side. And I am encouraging them, if they have not already studied it and read it, to really get to know all of those recommendations, to read the document and support those recommendations. They have been vetted all across the state. They are sound, and this would do a great deal of support in helping us fill those vacancies across our state and help us aggressively with our teacher recruitment and attrition woes. Another issue is I think we're going to have to change our mindset. Mike and I talk a lot about having an open mindset, and I think that we're going to have to look at recruiting teachers differently. And I think we're going to have to start recruiting teachers earlier. And we need more investment in our teacher cadet programs, our pro-team programs, our teaching fellows programs, our Call Me Mr. programs. I'm very happy I got an opportunity to study some of the pre-filed bills on the House and Senate side. I'm very happy to see that there's a recommendation to even put more money into the Call Me Mr. program as one of the strategies to fill our vacancies. But it's going to take a different mindset in us. We have the skill, it's just the will to get this work done, to make sure. But I encourage everyone to take a look at those recommendations. They were well written, well prepared, and I certainly hope that members of the legislature will take them seriously and that we can see some action and have an impact on our teaching corps.
I mean, let's talk about, I guess, sort of one school in particular, in Mellichamp Elementary, and sort of what has worked for you, and I mean, I guess what lessons do you think that in your career, and certainly running a school, what lessons might be applicable to other parts of the state in areas like yours?
I'm glad you asked. I appreciate that.
I saw you looking too.
When I think about, you know, Mr. Brennan talked about our kids have souls. Our teachers have souls. You know, when you say that, and I think about our stories, one thing about why I believe we should, or a way that we can recruit and retain teachers, and I can say this is a plug or not a plug all I want, but Call Me Mr. literally changes lives, with no doubt about it. We're talking about somebody that had no thought about being a teacher. So you talk about growing your own. We ask kids now what they want. My children are there back there. You ask our children, what do you want to be when you grow up? They're not saying teachers. That's a problem. That's a problem that they're not saying that. And why did I not say that? And so when you talk about growing your own, I was one that I was grown from my state, but I was leaning on my story. Why did I want to become a teacher? And so my story was developed. Teachers need to be paid a whole lot more, not just because they need the money. They need to be paid a lot more because they don't do it for the money. That's a really big issue, I think, for our teachers. They don't do it for money. I wrote a book called Weapons of Mass Distractions. And so in that, it talks a lot about people wanting to do what they've been called to do, but they're too distracted. Our teachers want to teach, but we are distracting them. Call Me Mr. helps us remove all distractions. That's what it does. And when you talk about how to keep them within 5 years, so we're talking about something that is actually working that the state really needs to look at. I was kept through a network in the Call Me Mr. program. I want y'all to hear this. In Call Me Mr., I was recruited, I was trained at 17 years old. I was given content, not just about how to teach subjects, but how to teach students. In that, we talked about the power of relationships. Have you heard of the teacher Barry White Jr., the handshake teacher all over the world? He was trained through the Call Me Mr. program. He was trained through a network of people that when he thought about giving up, nope, you have a lot of brothers around you that's saying, no sir, remember why we said we're doing this. We know the money's not there. And we had these conversations about our rural schools in the Claflin University, in libraries, in Clemson University hallways. We were talking about that. And so it's a network. You surround people around a network. They don't stay because of money. They stay because of the call. And that's why we have a teacher, even my Teach for America, the same thing. They have institutes. And Call Me Mr., we have summer leadership institutes. So we don't stop when the doors close on the summer. We keep talking about these issues during the summer. And we're literally having these powwows about what can we do to be great? How can we be innovative? We wish the state could hear us. We say all these things like that. And these things would develop us. And we talk about being leaders first and teachers second. And so again, if we really want to make a difference, we got to look at things that are actually working. You can't lead what you don't know. And I say that all the time. And so when you come into talk about our schools, it really feels like our rural schools are treated like third world countries. It really does. I'm in an area like that. Can I be real? It feels like segregation. It does. In my community, our school's on one side of the track. Our school, little community is divided in between tracks. And sometimes I'll drive my kids over on the other side of the town, and they're looking like they visited another world. That's not fair. And so if the state will consider those things, when you talk about educating your community, we got to look at not just schools, but what can we do with communities, and we have programs that are actually working if we would just stop being afraid to talk to them. We would stop being afraid to visit our schools. Come to our school. You know, it's afraid. Sometimes people don't do it because they're afraid. They're afraid of what they're actually going to see. And then they're afraid because they're actually going to have to what? Do something. And so I invite you, come to our areas, feel the pain that we feel. We need real business relationships with our schools. Real relationships where if you're designing your business sector, come to our schools to help us learn your language. I bet we'll become better test takers when you do that. But there need to be real relationships that's going to make a difference. And I think we have programs that are doing it, and we would just be courageous enough to say we don't know everything and get some help from people that actually make some things happen.
So I guess kind of going off that theme, Mike, I wonder if you have thoughts on how the business community, and really, I mean, the business community is sort of just a community, how the community could better engage with schools. And I mean, I think, you know, one thing that's come up a lot in our reporting, certainly, and conversations about education, is how, you know, the system sort of became outdated and change has been piecemeal and sort of patchwork over time. I wonder if there's a way, from where you sit in an industry and a business community that's changing an awful lot and very fast, how those conversations could sort of keep you know, the schools more up to date and modern in the future.
A good question, Thad, and I'm impressed with the number of things that business is doing across our public schools in South Carolina. Michelin's got great programs. Boeing has great programs. BMW has great programs. BB&T provides financial literacy gaming in our high schools. BB&T also provides leadership training to principals through our leadership institute. And then in communities everywhere, there are businesses in part of school improvement councils. They still call them PTAs? PTOs. But I think business gets it that they have to be engaged if they want to have the right kind of people to come to work in their companies to continue to provide growth and prosperity to our entire state. You know, in public education, we're a business. It would be out of business by now. It would have died, quite frankly. And you know, a great example of that is look what's happening to General Electric. General Electric was 15, 20 years ago considered the prima donna of the Fortune 500. I predict in 2 to 3 years, General Electric won't exist. It'll be broken up, it'll be acquired, because they failed to do what they needed to do to become successful for the future. They just got to it too late. And that's why business today is doing a lot of disruption. Recognize that if we don't disrupt how we do business in a changing world, we're going to die. Same thing applies to public education. Same thing applies to universities, school districts, anything that is an organization of people. And you know, we need to disrupt our public schools so that we can begin just not to die, but to say we're going to disrupt them because we want them to thrive. And that's where we need to get to, and that's hard work. And one of the things I've helped found was Transform SC, that I still co-chair with Tim Arnold at Colonial Life and Pam Lackey from AT&T. And we made the decision that we needed some bottom-up kind of transformation in public education. And the teachers really wanted to be able to teach their children in different kind of ways. Examples of that would be, you know, project-based learning, competency-based learning, individualized learning. And we've got districts that are actually doing that today. And when you talk to those teachers, they're so thankful that somebody gave them the permission to do it differently in a way that would have a greater impact on the children that they'd be given to teach.
I'd like to add that also in making sure that our students are career and college ready is the push and the partnership between K-12 and the business sector in offering more apprenticeships for students. And I believe that that could also be another silver bullet because it will provide our students with a true glimpse into the workforce. And then we have these two entities working together to better prepare our students for the challenges, for those emerging jobs that are there and that they can acquire and soon take ownership of. So I certainly want to also offer up that as we continue this dialogue in moving South Carolina forward is to make sure that we continue to work from K-12 with higher ed, with the business community to make sure that we're not preparing students not only for college readiness, but for career readiness. But let these children very early on in their high school experience, in their tenure, to fully understand about the workforce. And I want to also just rally behind the profile of the South Carolina graduate. I don't know if you have a slide to show the group, but that is a beautiful testament that has been endorsed by so many organizations, education organizations. I'm glad that the General Assembly, SCASA, very proud under my tenure as chair of the board, the school board signed on, EOC, we all came together to say these are the competencies, the characteristics, and the dispositions South Carolina high school graduates should be able to do, demonstrate, and perform when they graduate. So I'd like to also offer up apprenticeships and internships for our students. I think that will be ever so critical in making sure that we get those kids ready.
Including elementary school. It's like we talk a lot about secondary schools in that as well, and I kept hearing her say K-12, say yes, elementary. And our teachers are here, and our students are here right now. We use the profile graduate language in our creed every morning. Every morning we say, Melchamp Elementary School will graduate all students with life characteristics, world-class knowledge and skills, so they're college and career ready. Our kids, 300 plus kids say that every morning. So we're ready for those relationships too to be brought even down to elementary school.
But I would be remiss when we're talking about curriculum. Certainly, we certainly want to promote the core content areas. And being a former English teacher, certainly want to rally behind and support those content areas. But also, we can't forget those children who learn differently, multiple intelligences, and making sure that we certainly infuse STEM and STEAM, and that A for the arts, for those students who are more inclined for the visual and the performing arts students. That's a great competency as well. And we can't leave those children behind as we look at this whole education reform work.
Thank you. And I think we're going to segue now. At each of these forums, we have a special guest, a young adult who reminds us why we're having these conversations, why we need to have great opportunities for all of our kids. And tonight we have Mr. Tony Goodloe. If he and Paul Bowers, my colleague, would come to the stage. Hopefully you'll recognize Mr. Goodloe. He's in our series. He graduated last spring from Allendale Fairfax and now is at USC Salkehatchie. And I'll leave it to them.
All right. So I warned Tony I was going to be his hype man today, but I wanted to say a few words about him. We met about a year and a half ago for the first time, and I was in Allendale County to write about the second state takeover of the school district. The second time there was a state of emergency. And Tony was telling me today he regarded me with a little bit of suspicion at first, which is fair. I was not there to report good news about his home. We've gotten to know each other a little bit since then. I've come to know him as a thoughtful speaker, a person who's wise beyond his years, and I'm really glad he's able to speak directly to y'all tonight, because I've enjoyed it every time I've spoken with him. So, Tony, for starters, I was new to Allendale County. Probably a lot of folks here have never been, and by way of introduction, I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about the story of your grandma and what she told you about growing up in Allendale.
Yeah. So my grandmother was born in Allendale. She went to the same school district I went to back when it was segregated. And she remembers walking 10 miles to school and 10 miles back home and watching students on the bus, but it never discouraged her. My great-grandmother used to work for 2 cents every hour, and she put 5 students through college. And my grandmother was a teacher for 39 years, and she taught in LA and Atlanta and came back home. And after she retired, she went back to substitute because she loved it so much. But ever since a young age, my grandmother always told me that the one thing no one can take away from you is your education. And I tell this joke that I never knew college was like different from like middle school to high school. I thought it was just the next step up, because it was hammered into me from that young age that you had to go to college because you had to get your education. And also another thing she always told me was that you could do anything you want to, as long as you have your education and you put in some hard work. You can do what you want in this world, no matter what you are, where you come from. And so never let an area or who you are affect that. That's just a point of your life at one point. If you work hard and you shred harder, you can get to a different place. And I've kept that with me for a long time.
So, Tony, as you grew up, you got a few chances to see other parts of the world.
Yeah.
You were captain of the debate team.
Yeah.
You did Boys State. You did the Clemson Emerging Scholars Program.
Yeah.
Having visited other schools, met other students, when you came back to Allendale, what did you realize was missing?
Yeah, so like for debate, I was debate captain for 2 years, and we used to go off to like these big schools, right? So like we went to Asheville High School in Tennessee, and we saw this big school with the stone, and like you used to go down the hallways and you see like arts club and like dance and Spanish and French and all these things. I'm like, when you come down to back to Allendale, it's like there's no art programs, like. And there's a lot of gifted students there. A lot of my friends were artists, and like if you could engage those students, then they can get that energy out. A lot of kids are not sports kids. They're not going to be basketball players or football players. And it's like they need something else. And then when some students, they don't know how to use that energy, right? So when they get back into the classrooms, it's like they don't know how to like use that energy as well. I'm glad I found like my own outlets like debate and writing, but not a lot of kids have that guidance, and like I credit that to my family and things like that. But like I said, like sometimes like it felt like our school was like kind of like a skeleton almost, to where like it was just like you had your core classes, but like it was nothing else. And a lot of kids would like go to school and like go home and nothing else engaging. And like do like 30 minutes of homework. Some kids would just breeze through that. Like I finished my homework even before I got home, like sometimes. So it was like they didn't have anything to do. And that's a big part of like education and like engaging creative minds.
Yeah. You kept the debate team going for a couple of years. What's the status of it now that you're graduating?
Well, I kind of like, it breaks my heart because right now the debate team at Allendale Fairfax High School is no longer active. It was 59 years of history, 59 years of going to debate tournaments and doing things that these kids like. We've won, the team has won tournaments like Arizona State and all these amazing tournaments. There's a trophy case at Allen at Fairfax High School, and there's one whole section that if you look at are debate trophies, and now that whole thing is gone. And sometimes, like, I feel like sometimes it might be that I didn't put in enough work, but it was always going away. It was always, as the school started to decline, it got away from its academic interest, and it went away. And a student like me could only fight so much to keep it alive. And even though I loved it, it has to be something else. It has to be other people to love it too. So it's no longer active, but it should be. It should be.
We've heard a lot of people talk tonight about the problem of teacher retention, and that, you know, we can talk about that in the abstract. We can talk about the high rates of turnover and the number of teachers quitting the profession. For you, you know, as a student, you saw a lot of teachers come and go, including some that some really great teachers you connected with. What was that like for you as a student?
One thing I want to say is that in my schoolies, we have some amazing teachers. Like some teachers that come 7 o'clock in the morning and won't leave till 5 o'clock in the afternoon just to help students. But sometimes I see their frustrations because it's like they're not getting help in the classroom, or they're not getting like resources and materials or things that students need. Like I remember I didn't have her, but I knew a teacher who was like, these kids need art, and these kids need music, and these kids need all these things. And then like it was like the school was always worrying about something else that didn't seem as much as a crisis as those things. I heard up here that some kids have different ways of thinking. And sometimes when you stimulate that art side of their minds, it helps them in math or reading or history. I know if I didn't write, I couldn't like sit down and listen to math. Like it was no way. But I learned how to write, and I learned how to get my stories out. But some kids, they haven't found it. And so like if you have those programs there, like clubs and things like that, they can get there, and teachers are fighting for that there. But if they're not giving support, or they're not giving resources, or like how can they make a whole club work? So it was kind of sad.
Now that we've put you on the front page of the paper, you were saying that people recognize you around town sometimes and want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Sorry. You know, when you stop to talk to people about it, what do they want to say? What were their concerns about education?
Well, like I said, it's like I was in high school and like I was working, like not working, but I was like saying, how about like we try to start this, or we try to start this, or we try to start this, and a lot of my plans didn't work out. But when this report came out, and I'm so thankful for the Post-Courier for writing it, I guess it made some people switch. And now they come up to me and talk about, oh, what do you think about this? Or like, is that really true? True. But we have to have those conversations, right? Because when we get complacent, sometimes these places are hidden from our eye view. So people in like Columbia or Greenville or Charleston, they don't see Sloan because sometimes they don't go through there or whatever. And so these kids are in these bubbles and they're not being helped. And so I'm glad that this has now made people think and wake up. And now, like, now that we all woke up, it's time that we do something about it.
All right. Thanks again, Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, we're going to move to the question and answer section, and we would love to get as many people in as possible, so please keep your questions and comments short so we can do that. And we would like to invite Superintendent Spearman back up here in case you'll have questions for her. And if you would like to ask a question, if you could just come to the mic.
evening. How are you? I'm Sally Hughley. In my early career, I worked for Dick Riley. I was a speechwriter, right, Dick? Or minister of propaganda. Here's what I want to ask, though, and this may not be the right panel, but if there are legislators in the auditorium, I'd like them to think about this. The Abbeville case was started over 20 years ago, and the state of South Carolina fought the Abbeville case for 20 years. The Supreme Court finally said, yes, the education in the state is minimally adequate. However, the General Assembly the very next year made sure that the state Supreme Court was different. Someone retired, and they overturned the decision. Now, what signal does that send in our state to the business community, to the teachers, and to the legislature? So that's my question, and I'll hang it out there.
Well, I'll comment because I went into office right after the decision was handed down. And I'll tell you, we took it very seriously. I have tried to take it very seriously. I live in a rural area. I live in one of the Abbeville districts. I will tell you that the legislature, and in defense of legislators, my experience is that over the last, since the Education and Accountability Act of 1998, that the General Assembly has sent hundreds of millions of dollars to rural areas. And we don't have a whole lot to show for the money that's been invested. So I defend them a bit in this because I think we have tried things. We've been trying things for a long, long time. I think that the problem has been that we have often sent lots of money into areas that may have needed a little more guidance and a little more assistance. And that's why I am really pushing this so much, and one of the panelists mentioned it. Education is a system. The end result that we want to have is a quality teacher in every classroom. Teachers stay and work for great principals. If they know their principal, the teachers are nodding. If you've got a great boss, you're going to stay there and work for them. I bet you your retention rate is fantastic at your school. And the superintendent hires those principals. And then the superintendent is hired by the school board. If any one of those pieces gets out of whack, the system's not working very well. And that is why I think we have not focused on all pieces of it. We focused on just sending money. And money is, while you got to have it, and you got to have it to buy resources, but you got to have the leadership and the governance structure all in place to make sure the system is working. That's why you hear me talking so much about the leadership at the school board level, the leadership at the superintendent leadership levels to make the right decisions. And so I'm saying to legislators, to the governor, yes, we need more money for education, but we have got to really be skillful about where we send it, who's in control of it, how it's going to be spent, and really give a lot of technical assistance into some of our areas that quite honestly don't have the expertise at all those levels that they need. And that's a hard conversation to say. But we can't just blame this on legislators. It's all of us. But the state of South Carolina has appropriated a lot of money over the years to school districts and that need help and that are low performing, and we don't have a lot to show for all that investment. So I'm trying to really work with them, work with the local leadership, be frank, and having to, as I said in my remarks, say some things that we've been afraid to say. We have segregated communities. We have towns that are dead. Teachers are not going to live there. We tried paying teachers a salary and a half years ago, like teacher specialists, and nobody would go and stay because the towns were dead. So it's a complex issue that is going to take commerce development, as the governor stated yesterday. We got to build up the towns. We got to make sure the mental health and physical health is taken care of, and attract the community, the young people who are there. They'll come back home and stay. So I think that while the General Assembly, is easy to blame, I don't blame them all. I think they've tried. I think we all have got to have better leadership into how we do this together. It takes all of us. But the answer is not, we have kind of looked at that it's just money. And it's not just money. It's got to be some really wise decisions to be made, and some bold decisions, as I said, about the governance structures in these communities, then the programming that's sent back, and who controls it.
Real quick, minimally adequate is an embarrassment to this state.
Yes.
It's an embarrassment to the citizens. It's an embarrassment, should be an embarrassment to the General Assembly and the governor. And I know it's an embarrassment to the state superintendent of education. Could you imagine that if Boeing says, we're going to make minimally adequate airplanes, and BMW says, we're going to make minimally adequate BMWs, and so on, and so on, and the legislators in the back, and your law firms, we're only going to provide minimally adequate legal advice to our clients. You wouldn't do that. I don't know of a business that has that as their motto.
LaShonda Woods Roberts. And Superintendent Spearman, you kind of touched on what I was going to ask about. I'm a former teacher and educator in other capacities from Florida, came here for law school approximately 3.5 years ago. Left the classroom, obviously, right? Because I felt that the art wasn't happening until after testing was over. That's when I really felt like a teacher. And you do feel stifled in those four walls, so no matter how great you are, Teacher of the Year, got a lot of opportunities, did more in 7 years than a lot of people do in 30. However, I still left. So I didn't feel at home. So in the spirit of STEAM and looking at creativity, that art, what is the uncomfortable creativity conversations looking like on the various levels in South Carolina? Because we talk about these dead zones, but is there a group, a commission, or someone thinking about possibilities? Are there talks of providing government subsidies for trying to buy some of these houses in these dead areas? That's a great opportunity for business people to partner with, because what it looks like in some places, at least from what I've seen, there's a lot of supplanting going on by businesses who know that the kids aren't coming out STEM or STEAM ready, and it shouldn't be supplanting, it should be supplementing to the districts, right? So I'm just wondering what the uncomfortable creativity is looking like. Is it foreign because in Florida, every child gets the same amount. I'm not saying it's a stellar amount. I think it's 7,800 or 8,000. I know that's not the case in South Carolina because people don't want to take from their district, right? But could a portion be taken and added to a general pot? What is happening in the conversations? We can pay lip service to a lot of the problems, but are people really trying to hone in on it and ready for the pushback of the uncomfortableness? I'm just wondering, what are some of the things in play right now? Are there commissions right now looking for ways to strengthen, because we know what the problems are, and those who are closest to the problem, like young brother Goodlow, are closest to the solution. They're here at the table. Take advantage of it. Build from it. I think you all have a good thing going, but where's the action? That's what I'm waiting for and looking for.
So, I don't want to monopolize, but I'll tell you quickly what I know. Yes, there are conversations going on right now. Deep conversations looking at retooling our education funding formula, ways to send more support out to rural areas. The legislature last year gave me authority to work in our those 13 districts that I told you about that are 1,500 or less, to almost force, if not willingly, but they are willing to share services, to move to where they're trying to save money at the district office level to push funding down. The career programs, there are conversations going on now to look at a regional approach to building career centers in rural areas where high school students don't have the varied opportunities they deserve. There's some great conversations, which I call action. I think it will move to action in the General Assembly this year. But again, it takes everybody helping. Businesses are coming to us to talk, so lots and lots of good conversation. I could go on, but yes, I see action happening like I've never seen before.
And it's a system. That's why I'm glad you keep putting out there about being a system. At our school, we have a ballet studio in our school. We have a golf club in our school. We do oratory big time in our district and in our school. We drumline in our school. We have little outlets that allow children to get a chance to get their energy out, and it's making a difference in the classroom and in growth process. And then we have, again, teachers, like again, one teacher that's here today. She thinks about this, let's do a spelling bee, let's bring something like that back. And so now you have we've become a literacy focused school. And so these are systemic things, but it takes some bravery, some courageousness about having courage by having a conversation like, let's talk to the dance center in our community. What would it take for you to come in our school and teach ballet? Just so go figure. And yeah, I'll come in and then we pull money from certain places, because I promise you, if it was about a test-taking program that we need to get, it would be easy to pull money from everywhere. And I'm not even trying to be funny, like literally, if it's about testing, we're going to do that. But then when it comes to doing things that's going to engage the creativity, as you mentioned, and then we have proof that it works, then now we need to take what's working in a place and then just make it systemic. And so again, it's happening. It just has to be done by more than just a couple of people, as you said earlier too.
Just to add just a bit to that, is one of the things that I think that we need to do more of is tap into the resources of universities and colleges across the state. We need to be more engaged in working with the schools and the communities and helping to develop these actions. And I think what is key here is we all have to listen to what the community needs, rather than us coming in and telling communities and teachers and schools what they need to do. And so we have assets and initiatives that we can bring to bear. I look at our university here, we can look at Clemson again, whether it's Claflin, you pick it, Winthrop, Furman. We have an enormous amount of resources and assets and initiatives already underway that people don't know about. So we have to do a better job as well in working with communities and listening and working with the communities to help them engage in developing, be it economically, health, nutrition, whatever it is. So certainly that's a part of who we are as a college here at USC.
I certainly believe that we definitely need to strengthen our partnerships, as we mentioned earlier, K-12, to really have a mindset of K through 16 in South Carolina, and that's what the profile of the graduate suggests and promotes. And I know we don't have time tonight, but I would be remiss if we didn't talk about college affordability, all right? And the reason why I bring that up is because we are not producing enough teachers to fill these vacancies across our local school districts, the state, and the nation. And a lot of it is because these young people believe that they are being bridled in debt. So at some point, we need to have a sincere, deep, honest conversation about career and college and readiness. We need to make sure that college is affordable so we can attract outstanding teachers to the teaching profession and they don't opt out. We have young people who want to become teachers, but they don't believe that it's a financially sound proposition for them. So we've got to have those conversations so we get those children, those young people targeted and interested in teaching.
Thanks. I'll bring the conversation back to first year teachers because I'm one of those. So you told the story about the one teacher who was sitting at the desk crying, right? I guess teachers don't usually cry because they can't actually effectively teach, right? Maybe they can't manage the classroom. Maybe they can't handle the paperwork. So all the stuff that we learn at the university level, which is how to teach, we don't need to be taught again in induction. We don't need to be taught again at meetings. How about teach us how to get the behind-the-scenes work done, how to manage that classroom really effectively. I feel like I probably should have cried, but I had prayer, so I did that instead. I just had one idea to maybe throw out there. Maybe y'all could expound upon it. if we could have that one-on-one training, like y'all said, one-on-one training where someone from the district comes down and gets a sub for that teacher that one day. And in the classroom, that district person and the teacher, while the sub is covering the class, pretends like they're going through a day and like how to do that paperwork, and maybe someone from the school is there too, you know, and they get all that. I think it only takes 2 days for that teacher to get all that stuff taken care of, because I had to learn it all, you know. Yeah, it's just really difficult. So I just, hopefully y'all can come up with a great idea.
So my name is Don Polite Jr. I'm actually a grad student here. I was a former teacher from New York before I came down here. And I do want to echo something that David said, is like the idea of almost like a mid-semester sabbatical, 1-2 kind of days, so that teachers can have time off to learn these other skills, go to workshops and stuff like that. And my main point is why I left teaching. I was in Brooklyn, I went to one of those charter schools, but they paid you up to wazoo. So I wasn't lacking for money. What I was lacking was an investment in me as a teacher. And what I mean by that is, yes, as Principal John over here said, we have souls too. We don't always just need, we need to bring more business people in so our kids can like see what else is out there. Our teachers are talented people. So yes, get paperwork off their desks, because some of our teachers, if they have less paperwork, can actually teach the baby. Some of us can actually teach Spanish. Some of us can actually teach salsa, bachata, merengue, and every other dance out there. But we're doing paperwork. We're doing, hey, here's this new test and you need to prepare for that. Hey, you do all this kind of stuff. I didn't stay there from 7 to 7. I think my mom does in Florida right now. And they're being told that you need people from the community to come and show our kids what they can do. But we're not, how many of us actually know what our teachers can do outside of teaching? How many of us actually know what they can do? And I think that conversation needs to be had as well.
Hello, I'm a sophomore at the university. I came through the South Carolina school system through Lexington and Richland 5, and I was a teacher cadet as well. So my question is just a general thing. I have a significant concern, especially about not only that sort of engagement of the teacher, but also having teachers who can engage well with their students, that understand the sort of situations that they're going through, and understanding and knowing how to work with situations, especially in these lower, what I'm going to call the corridor of opportunity rather than the corridor of shame. In these schools where many people might turn off because they have bad situations at home or bad situations outside of the school. How can you train teachers to more effectively deal with these sorts of situations and continue a sense of engagement that might make the difference between somebody flunking out of high school and moving on to become perhaps getting a full ride at a college and moving on to becoming a professional?
Well, good question. And I think, you know, again, as we look at this profession, the complexity of what it takes on a day-to-day basis for a teacher to teach, and we've heard some of it already from teachers. This is something that is not a skill, like nailing hammering a nail. This is something that over time we as educators can help prepare you with knowledge, but we can't prepare you for every single situation you're ever going to face in a classroom. That again is why I'm so passionate about following up and having that support mechanism and having that opportunity, just like you're saying, the whole sense of how do you deal with certain issues? What's the day-to-day interaction? We know the knowledge, the understandings of what it means to be a teacher and how to do the teaching. But there are situations that you're going to face or others will face that they've never faced before. But with a coach and a mentor there, especially in those first 3 critical years, that is what's going to turn the corner for most or many of the teachers out there. The second thing that I would say, it's back to certainly what Superintendent Spearman has said. Certainly I think the governor has addressed this, panelists have addressed this, I've mentioned this. The complexity of what a child experiences in a day-to-day, in their day-to-day world, is such that we cannot place on the plate of teachers all the responsibilities of that child's life. It takes more involved. It takes mental health officials. And I applaud you for what you're talking about by 2022 and having a mental health professional in every school. It's about nutrition. It's about other health issues. It's about the ACEs. And so we've got to be able to give those support resources for the child in the school so the teachers can work together as a team to address those critical needs of those children so they can learn.
I really want to add to that. Internships, but they were really baptized by fire. That's exactly what they are. Literally, just like that. We were thrown in there, but we were with teaching. We developed lesson plans. We had discussions. We built relationships with the community first. We went in those communities, and we, a lot of communities like that have summer programs. They have feeder programs, lunch programs. We would go into those programs and say, we have about 8 young men who want to be teachers. Can they just take the summer from June to almost August and spend time practicing their skills on your kids? Can they get to know your students? Your students? Can they get to know your community? Can they get to know your parents? I felt like a 4th-year teacher when I started my 1st year. I had better, and this is not bragging or anything, this is a system. As a 1st-year teacher, veterans were coming to my classroom for classroom management tips. No exaggeration. Veterans were sending their kids to my class, not because I was the black man who knew how to handle kids. Every black man, just because you're a black man doesn't mean you know how to do classroom management. So that's something people gotta understand too. Yeah. But systemically, I was taught how to do it, but I had to learn through that system. And so again, things are actually working. There's some things that's happening at Coleman Middle that's powerful because we're going to those areas and we're already practicing teaching. And so if the Coleman Middle program is not expanded, then I would say to you, find programs in these communities, in these areas that you can engage in, connect with your dean and some people, and get some lesson plans, and then say, hey, can I go in and practice a little bit, some skills that I'm learning, and I think you'll make a difference, and it'll help to enhance the calling that's on your life too. As an educator, that's what you want to do. But thanks for asking that question. I appreciate that.
Hi, I am Ashley Brown with South Carolina Arts Commission, and Tony, thank you. You're amazing. And I'm so glad to hear many people talk about the role of the arts and talking about multiple ways to learn, that we don't all learn the same way. And we talked about it in the context of the classroom, but I think innovation inspires innovation, and I think innovation flows down in our system. And students can't be innovative unless their teachers are innovative. And teachers cannot be innovative unless their administrators are willing to be innovative. And it takes bravery to be innovative, as you're showing in your school. So what can we do? What can we do at the State Department, in higher ed, in business? What can we do to help administrators tap into that bravery when what they're hearing is, I have to have this test score, so this is extra, right? We need to deal with this acute problem. The arts are extra, world languages are extra, whatever that is. How can we inspire them to be bravery? How can we give them the systems of support so that they're willing to take that risk? And what we're seeing at the end of the day is if they take that risk, the test scores will follow. It's not leading, what is it, the tail wagging the dog? It's not leading, that will be the result of that bravery and of that innovation. And maybe you just can speak to this as an administrator yourself, but I'd just like to hear about that from those different perspectives.
Well, at the Department of Education, and you know, I'm a music teacher myself, so I agree with you totally. We have tried to redirect funding to support more summer programs, Engaging Minds. We helped sponsor that in rural districts across the state, actually helped in Allendale. So, yeah, you were a counselor. So, I couldn't agree with you more. Any way that we can redirect funds, any ways that we can inspire folks to be innovative, to give them flexibility. Every waiver that school districts come to the state board, they want to try something innovative, the board we have now approves it. All they got to do is ask and come. So we're wanting to see, we want to see people trying new things. We want to see people giving students as many opportunities as they can. And the other piece that we're working on now, I was disappointed that we weren't able to get this in the new report card system. One of the things that I felt so strongly, as many have, that we have to have multiple measures, ways to measure our school. It's not just about one test score. And our old system was one test score. Our new system for high schools is multiple measures. It's about, are you getting your students prepared for college? Or do you have RTC? Do you have industry credentials? And schools are thriving, high schools are thriving, but our elementary and middle school report cards still really one test score. And we're working to have, how can we expand that to include the arts? To let elementary schools, middle schools get credit for the leadership development programs that they do, for all the community service things that we want children to do and students to participate in. So that's a work in progress. We're working on it. We need input on that, but I hope it won't happen, I don't think, for this year's report card, the 19 report card, but my goal is by 2020 that this will be in place and be on our elementary and middle school report cards. That will be an incentive and just to show our support for it. That's what we mean with the profile of the graduate. It's all of these things together, not just content.
Good afternoon. The question I have, we've talked a lot about recruiting and retaining teachers, and besides the Call Me Mr. program, what is the state doing to specifically recruit and retain teachers of color in our classroom? And then, more importantly, what is the state doing to prepare our teachers to be able to teach students of color who make up about 33% of our state?
Anybody else? I've got an answer, but I don't want to hog the mic here. A couple of things. As far as helping teachers know how to teach children, whether they're of color, in poverty, different cultures, I would say the guru for that is Dr. Tammy Pulaski at Francis Marion, who has adopted, has a full coursework. She is going out into school districts to work with teachers. It's incredible the results that we're hearing from that. So that's just one thing. We have been trying to work, and our higher education institutions are responding to build programs where adults who are living in these rural areas, I go through many schools, I see many young men and women serving as teacher aides who would make fantastic teachers but just did not have a chance to go to college for whatever reason. So we're trying to work with virtual programs, the new Palmetto College program that the University of South Carolina has, making it easier to support folks to get a 4-year degree. And that, I believe, will help us build our minority population of teachers.
And Teach for America as well. I think Vanity's still here. Vanity, they also, in addition to programs that Call Me Mr. Teach for America has a rural school leadership focus. Like they literally have an intentionality to go into schools just like ours to build not the capacity in their leadership for teachers and also students of color as well. So that's another program too that should be a strong relationship that our state should have as well.
And I think we also need to pat ourselves on the back that South Carolina has, in addition to the robust strategies and efforts by our State Department of Education to recruit teachers and sustain them into the profession, but we also have an entire division up in Rock Hill, South Carolina, Sarah, the Center for Educator Recruitment and Retention, and they are just charged. That's all they do, is work all across our state to support teachers and provide great professional development for teachers and market and elevate the teaching profession. And we are very unique. Very few states have a division that work alongside the State Department of Education. So I wanted to offer that up. And I also want to just go back to one of the recommendations from the ad hoc committee that you might find of interest, and that is recommendation number 6, which is to add teaching and education as an enhancement to the Life Scholarship. So there are efforts that are trying to be put in place to make the education profession and teaching far more attractive and doable for young people who are looking to come into the teaching ranks. So I wanted to share that with you as well.
And I just mentioned, and you probably know what I'm going to say, but certainly our, a focus of our college and our programs is on social justice and equity and inclusion. And certainly I'll just mention one thing: the Center for the Education and Equity of African American Students is certainly a prime example of what we're doing in terms of addressing minority issues, minority teachers, and building not only the idea of recruiting more, but certainly addressing the issues of social justice, because that's at the heart of where we are with this.
Hi, I'm Mary Ann Sansonetti Wood, and this is my 21st year in education. I'm here to ask a question about, we've talked about mental health for our students. What about mental health for our teachers? And the reason I say this is, in the 21 years that I've been in education, I left the classroom for 10 years. And I left an amazing district position to go back to the classroom because that's where I belong. And my first year back in the classroom was the hardest year that I ever had as a teacher. Teaching had changed in 10 years. The kids had changed in 10 years. And I was dubbed a master teacher because I have experience. And honestly, by December, I was on medication. I was trying to figure out, did I do the smart thing by taking a $20,000 pay cut and going back in the classroom? Was this really what I was supposed to be doing? And it was. I was able to work through it. But there wasn't a system set up for the veteran teacher for that mental health. And so I'm kind of wondering if that's even something that you guys have thought about.
Well, Mary Ann, I can share in business that we think about the mental health of our associates all the time, because I think we've learned over time that you can't just pigeonhole people and say, well, you get to be this way at home, you get to be this way at work, and you get to be this way here. At the end of the day, you're dealing with a whole person. And you know, issues of mental health are real issues. They're just as real as cancer. They're just as real as heart problems. The mind is a mystery to me, and so we're fairly sensitive to it with our associates, and we encourage them when they have those issues, and we have, you know, avenues they can go to get help with those. And I, forgive me for not knowing that, but I just assumed that we had the same kind of availability for teachers in our schools. So obviously I was wrong, forgive me, but yeah.
I think, honestly, as for teachers separately, no, but thank you for bringing that to my attention. But I will tell you, and I see Representative Gilcock-Hunter and Representative King have come in the back. We, as teachers, participate in the state health program. We need to enhance our mental health coverage for all state employees.
Without raising the cost.
Right. So, you know, and that's easy to say. Right. It's very, very costly. But I know both of them would, and Representative, that you couldn't ask for two better supporters of public education there. But that is one way we could do that. But thank you for bringing up that topic, and I'll definitely go home and we'll work on this.
Thank you.
My name is Eddie Masson. I run a nonprofit called Masson Global, and we focus on teaching youth coding and computer science, primarily in rural areas. So I'm responsible for teaching about 500 youth across 14 programs coding. And my question is there any increased effort on training teachers in computer science curriculum? Because what I'm finding is the frustration of teachers, like, oh, you know how to code? You know, become a hot commodity. I've been doing even some pro bono training for teachers because these requirements are put on them as if they have taken a 4-year computer science degree and just go in the classroom and teach computer science. And it's affecting not only the teachers' mental health and stability, but also the students' ability to learn and be engaged. And from my personal background, I've done everything from working with robots to satellites in space. So I'm familiar with what it takes to work in computer science. So I want to know, is there any intentional focus on making sure that teachers are further trained and developed in these areas that they're being required to teach on?
Yeah, absolutely. We just adopted computer science standards. As you know, we're working now with the certification for teachers, but we know we can't wait, and it's more than just taking courses. So we're working with different companies to provide. I need to get your card. So you can help us, but regional programs going on now to train teachers in coding. We're doing a virtual course through our South Carolina Virtual School on coding. So it's kind of the hottest thing going right now, but we've really got to work to get those skill sets out with teachers to make them help them feel more comfortable with it, but we'd love to work with you. But yes, there is and we have for the first time, just in the last few months, we now have a ed associate at the department who's, that's their total focus is computer science education.
Hello, my name is Sierra Parrott. I'm a senior here at USC, and I'm also a teaching fellow. But my question was, so here at USC, the elementary education program specifically has prepared me so fully and holistically to be a teacher because they put us in the classroom from like my freshman year, like immediately. And so my question is, how can we, because then I also see the perspectives of people who have the same passion for teaching as me, who are my age, but are at different universities in South Carolina, who don't see that same immediate classroom entrance. And it can become discouraging because they hear these things and then their first year they aren't prepared for the experiences that come. But I've gotten to see these things through my program. So my question is, how can we encourage or even require other universities to implement these kinds of systems where you're in the classroom from day one and you get to see these real life classroom experiences?
Okay, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, certainly I appreciate you saying that, and I think that's one of the advantages that I see with many universities is that they do require early entry into the classroom, and there is nothing that we can exchange for that direct experience when you get into that classroom as a freshman. Most of our students have between 600 and 1,000 hours in the classroom before they graduate. But I just wanted to say that.
No, the push is for more clinical experience, pre-service type, and then even residency programs where teachers are serving a full year residency before they're fully certified. So I would say the teacher education deans, we meet with them, we approve their programs. There is a real push and more suggested, more clinical experience for all students. And really the programs that are really good are requiring more and more. And giving varied experiences, not just the elementary school right down the university campus that might have, their parents are all professors, and so it's highly educated parents, but that those students get out and serve in a Title I school or go to a rural area.
Good evening. My name is Marvin Pendarvis. I'm a member of the House of Representatives.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Oh, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. I wanted to be incognito. And I represent Charleston County, North Charleston to be specific. I'll say this, Principal Gene, I'm a fan. I've been listening to a lot of what you said, and I wanted to follow up on a point that this brother made here as far as African American teachers, especially African American male teachers. I know you asked a question earlier as far as what can the state do, but from your perspective, Principal, what do you believe community groups and the stigma that's associated with teaching, if there is one, particularly with African American males, and what can we do about that to change it? And again, when I say we, not necessarily a legislative body, because I recognize that there are some things that we've got to do legislatively to continue to recruit and retain some of our best and brightest, especially in our rural communities and minority communities. But more so, what can we do to talk to brothers and say, you know what, you have an opportunity to impact someone's life. You know, I live down in Charleston, and I work with the Charleston County School District quite a bit, and one of the frustrations that I get is hearing from brothers about what they need in the schools and the lack of us in there, and the kind of impact that we can have, our partisan groups that go in there and talk to some of the students. So what do you believe that we can do? Because I think, I'm familiar with the Call Me Mr. program. I'm a big fan of the work that they've been able to do, and I know that they really work on training brothers to get into the classroom and really work on some of these issues facing our youth. What do you believe that brothers like myself can work on in our communities to really show that you got to be able to give back in a meaningful way, and you can do it through teaching?
We invite you to our meetings as well. I saw you on live today as well, but you're doing our laws, and our state is great too. Literally do exactly what was done for us. If we stop try to be so deep with it all the time, you know, and just talk about saving lives. That's right. Dr. Jones recruited me. Now he's big shot now. He's Clemson University project director. But he never lost sight of what it means to just go grassroots and let me go find somebody. Right. It's kind of like I'm a preacher too, and so I believe in like witnessing, you know, going to somebody and telling them about, you know, what you know. And so I was recruited before there was a Call Me Mr. application. I applied to Claflin. Dr. Jones just snatched up a whole bunch of African American male applications and called us one by one. And so I think we need to still take that into consideration and find people with the potential. Right. You know, it's almost like that's how you really recruit. It's out there. Yeah, it's out there. And so sometimes you gotta see in people what they don't see in themselves. Right. And I always say this: say what you want to see until you see what you said you saw. Right. And so I wrote it in my book, Weapons of Mass Distraction. But I always say, and that's why I talk about the quarter of shame, say what you want to see until you see what you said you saw. And so I believe our state is in the situation it's in because we said something years ago and we're now still seeing it. So why not say something different? And so for me, I was called a teacher. I didn't want to do that, but somebody saw me when I didn't see myself. And so if we take these opportunities to go into communities and find potential, find talented individuals that we see. Yeah, I know you say you want to be an engineer. Okay, right. Come here, let me talk to you about education. Because that's what I said. I said I want to be an engineer, computer engineer. I said it to please everybody. But no one spoke to my purpose. And so we keep going, we're getting away from that. But people are alive to accomplish something. And we got to help children find their purpose. And in order to do that for children, we got to do that for adults. And to do that for adults, we got to find out now teaching is probably the greatest calling there is. I mean, if I could be spiritual, Jesus was the master teacher. You know what I mean? And so teaching is so powerful, it's so intimate, that really everyone is a teacher. It's just an aspect of what are you teaching. And so now we get to an area where we have students, especially students of color, who really need somebody in front of them that's more than a teacher. Somebody that can actually lead you towards your destiny and use teaching to do it. Right. Use the tool of education to do it. And so you bring people together that you tap and say, I think you have the potential. And come together and make them feel like it's something, it's an opportunity they can't refuse.
Well, brother, I just want to say I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
I appreciate you saying
that. Just want to interrupt for a minute, and I hate to really be the bad guy, but we've run way over, and that's great. This has been a great night, and we want to get to y'all's questions, but we want to really, if y'all can please, if we can be rather quick with the next 4 questions, and then invite all of you to stay, linger, please come ask questions on your own. I know a lot of people have already left, so all of y'all should have a copy of our series, and we hope that y'all read it again and again.
My name is Rutland Martin. I'm a 3rd grade teacher at Chapin Elementary School, and I graduated from the University of South Carolina College of Education last year. And I really believe that at the University of South Carolina, I was fortunate enough to have teacher preparation that transformed me from the inside out with Dr. Michelle Myers and learning about the culturally relevant pedagogy, and learning about all these things that in my walk in life I didn't have experience with. Not only do we need to do things to transform the lives of African American students in South Carolina, but how can we make sure that teacher preparation across the state and teacher professional development with teachers currently is aimed at the heart and has social justice at the heart of it, and not just pushing, you need to teach this curriculum, but making sure that the things that we want to see our state get better at, we can speak into our teachers so that we're changing the next generation.
Well, just quickly, I think it takes everybody's voice. I mean, I think, one of the things that we talk about, a lot, is about leadership. What is leadership? Leadership is the willingness to take action. We are all leaders. A title doesn't define a leader. You're not a leader because you're a principal. You're a leader because what's in your heart, your soul, your mind, and willing to take action. So this can't be pinpointed on a state, a General Assembly, the state superintendent, or a dean, or a principal. Again, it's going to take all of us, and to keep sharing that voice, keep pushing that message, because I certainly agree with you in what you're pointing out.
We've hosted professional developments in our school for Teach for America. They literally have topics like that. And so they have real good discussions about cultural development teaching. I have 7 Teach for America candidates in my building as teachers. And so when they have PD, this is what they're talking about. Social justices, how do you teach students that don't look like you? And from your perspective, you say, I don't see color, but your kids do. And so how do you have those type of conversations? I had a conversation with our teacher the other month about that. And so these PDs are happening, it's just finding out where they are. And so that's why I bring Teach for America up, because they have those conversations. College Missions having those conversations. It's just now being able to know that these programs exist. And hey, can I come and be a fly on the wall? Can I engage programs like that? I think as a teacher, you have to see yourself as a professional and be a CEO of your own profession, and say, I'm going to go out and find something. And I bet you'll start a movement, you know what I mean? But you can do that and then say, hey, this works. Come on, and bring people with you.
And I would say every institution, every college, every university out in the state, just like you're talking about, is doing the same thing. I know we are in terms of promoting professional development and doing professional development around these areas. So it is out there.
And also, I think it's very important as in-service teachers or induction teachers to make sure that we build a professional network. And there are representatives in the audience of the array of teacher advocacy organizations across our state, education advocacy groups. And I think it's very important that you also pipe in and connect in with them, because they often offer an array of these type of culturally relevant professional development opportunities that can help hone your craft.
Yes, my name is James McQuilla. I'm the Executive Director for the Greater Columbia Community Relations Council. And there are a lot of things on my mind, but one of them is I call it the elephant in the room, and hopefully you can address this. You can't be everything to everybody, okay? Right now, I think the most courageous conversation we can have is about the deteriorating social fabric. And see, a lot of times, I think the teachers are asked to be social reform engineers. The school system is supposed to be some type of I guess, how do I want to put it? To be totally different than business or medicine. Nowhere else do we ask a professional to take on every responsibility that comes up, except for preaching, right? And so, how do we address realistically? Because I think technically we can come up with great ideas for how to teach. I think we've come up with great ideas on how to teach. We know, I go into the schools myself and I use humor and discipline, and it works. But how do we pull back from expecting teachers to do everything, to be the police officer, to be the nurse, to be the physician, to be the social worker, to be the surrogate father and surrogate mother, to literally just go down and be everything, because it's not going to work that way. There has to be, one thing I learned in business is you have to focus. And I don't think they're able to focus on educating because they're expected to handle every aspect of an individual's life. And to me, it's impossible to do that. And really, no matter what we do to come up with better teaching methods, adding more money, bringing in more people, we haven't addressed the real issue that's causing a lot of the problems, and that's the social deterioration that they have to deal with on a daily basis.
So just briefly, one of the things that I would suggest is that we need to do a better job of building coalitions of those particular entities that are already in communities like yourself to help address these particular challenges within communities and schools. So to me, this is not an issue of that we need to invest more money in more initiatives. I think we have lots of initiatives out there. Problem is we don't have any assessment of all the initiatives that are available that we then can provide for principals or schools or communities to understand what are there. Again, if you just look at any particular university has a lot of opportunities to address specifically those challenges you're talking about. You know, how do we begin to put those together? And certainly that's something we're working on here is looking at assets and looking at what we can do to help communities make connections to those assets and utilize, whether it's social work, mental health, physical health, nutrition.
Hi, my name is Natalie Jackson, and above everything that I do, I'm a parent first. So not only do I work in a school that is in the neighborhood, I live in the neighborhood with the same kids. My biggest concern is how do we get parents to better help our teachers? Because that's the biggest thing. What kind of money initiatives are there for the PTOs and the SICs to better help and support our teachers? With parent support, teachers will go a lot further on top of everything else. So you guys talked about PTO, which I am the PTO president, but I'm starting from the bottom up. But I'm just trying to figure out when parents were complaining about schools, and I'm trying to play the devil's advocate from somebody who works in the district, but also has parents to see the same concerns. How do I better help these parents? How do we educate the parents so that the teachers have the support that they need to support their students and their children? So that's my platform, and that's my biggest thing. I have 4 kids in District 5, and we came to South Carolina, we stayed in South Carolina because of the school that I'm currently at, because I'm a product of several schools in several states. And I felt like South Carolina was one of the better ones from Chicago to Atlanta to Florida. So we stayed. Now me and my husband both work in the district, and we're both trying to go out to the community and better help parents and educate them from the bottom to the top. But I'm focusing on elementary because given when they're little, we don't have some of the problems going up the ladder. So what can I do, what can we do to better get parents in, to better support the teachers because they need it?
There's a great example of this in our state. Maybe there's more than one, but Molly, Dr. Lavender, that was Lexington 4? Yeah. Lexington 4. And John and I actually went out the same day to visit this school. It's an early childhood. They made an investment in early childhood education. And they used the Montessori method. They had kids down to 3-year-olds. They were moving to 2-year-olds the next year. But the amazing thing going on in the school was not what was going on in those classrooms, even though that was amazing. But what was amazing was down the hall were parents in classes. They were being taught parenting skills. They were being told what their young children were learning in school that day, so they were highly engaged. And then you go even farther down the hall, and there was a classroom of adults preparing to take their GED. And I said, you know, what if we did that in every one of these Abbeville districts, had a center like that in these rural communities that covers the whole gamut from the students to the parent to parenting and to parents improving their own education skills. I thought it was a wonderful model.
I want to get your email address. There's a parenting program our school district in Orangeburg, District 5, just went through. I want to say it's called Parenting Partners, but I went through it as well, and we have a graduation. You familiar with it? Are you Orangeburg?
No, I'm
okay.
Lexington 5, but I have a certificate because I completed the program.
Yeah.
I would like to bring it into more schools to better help the parents.
It's a powerful program. I went through it with, I'm a parent as well, but I went through, we have a graduation next week. But the tools that are being taught in that program, it's exactly what you asked. And so I think things like that, and we've heard program before, but this is more of a less program and more about building capacity in parents.
But part of the issue there is the funding. So it's just like we have SIC, we have funding for Title I schools,
yeah.
But that goes to the math specialists that we desperately need, and it goes to those. But there needs to be more money in the budget to better educate these parents so we don't have some of the problems that we have. Because if we had the money to educate the parents, then we were kind of helping solve part of the problem.
Yeah. See, we prioritized, so we took it off the top. So instead of giving it all the money to the schools, the district took off the top and did a program because they saw that as an issue, and so they actually targeted funding to support that in our school district. Hopefully, people can think things like that.
I'd like to also offer up that 21st century funding from the U.S. Department of Education is another great way for local school districts and schools to try to garner those funds. Because as a component of those 21st century grants, not only is the money earmarked to support academic and enrichment, cultural enrichment, but it is also designed for parental engagement. So just want to mention that. You might want to have some conversations at your local level with your school administrators. But I also want to use this opportunity to say parents can be the best advocates. Just like teachers need to vote, we need parents at the ballot box. Because when parents vote, and you vote in large numbers, then we get to elect good local leaders, state leaders here today, national leaders that can hear our pleas, hear our calls, hear our demands, and make good decisions for our communities and our schools.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for everyone for sticking around. I'll be really short. So I am Jennifer Doyle. I'm a product of USC's College of Education. I went here for undergrad. I got my master's in teaching, got my doctorate, and worked in South Carolina public schools, taught high school for 4 years, been working through our professional development school network at USC at a local high school for 4 years. Teach pre-service teachers. And so a question that I really wanted to ask, I hear a lot of y'all and a lot of us in education, we talk a lot about the critical needs of students. You know, we need to focus on community issues and we need to focus on this. But what I'm not hearing is how are we listening to the students? So I want to really thank you, Mr. Goodlow, for providing your opinion, your feedback. You're a student, you know exactly what you need in our schools, and I think oftentimes we don't listen to our students enough, and I have kind of was taking tally. I haven't really heard anyone, particularly aside from Mr. Gene, I believe, speaking too much on how are we listening to our students, and I think that's really important. We talked, policymakers talk a lot about, well, our businesses need this for the economic workforce. Well, what do our students need from us in our schools? And I really want to know how our policymakers are addressing that, particularly as well as our business leaders.
I'll say one thing about students. Our students, because we see them every day, they want their schools to look better than the communities that they live in. They do. Our rural schools, some of the issues that our kids see in their communities, some of the dilapidation of buildings and things like that, they want to learn a better environment. I hear that all the time. And again, my child's back there now, and some of the things he has to go through that are just beyond our control, it's just not fair. And so I do know facilities are what I'm hearing our children are always talking about, and going through. And it's unfortunate. Like we have outside corridors, so it's in 30 degree weather, walking from class to art is painful. You know, and then we have bathrooms on those corridors. So we had to tell them, don't use the outside corridors, go inside. So now you have all the kids using 2 bathrooms or inside. So these are frustrations, and because our kids have been used to dealing with it, now it's like, well, we just have, it's not going to get better, so let's just, we'll just make it.
They believe that they deserve that. I taught in a school where I wore a winter jacket every single day. I had to go to school in the winter because I was cold. My kids said, I'm cold. Well, I'm cold too.
Yeah. And that's minimally adequate.
Well, I'll just end with, because it's a great point for us to end our questioning, but I try and talk to the students when I visit schools. One of my most memorable conversations with, well, 2 different ones, was down in Timmonsville. On the day that we announced that we were going to be taking over the school district, I met with students that day, 2 different groups of students. And I said, what would you like to see happen at your school? And the hand shot up, and it's a young African-American male, about 6'15". He said, I want to be a welder. I really want to be a welder, but we don't have any welding programs. They got welding in Florence 1, but we don't have it in Florence 4. Well, he's in welding this year, okay? Because we set up, we worked together, a partnership with Florence 1, so the students at Timmonsville High School now are going and taking, another young lady said, I want to be a nurse. She's in a nursing, a life science program. And then I was down at Denmark-Oler High School, where wonderful, great kids, beautiful students who, a young lady sang. And she said, I talked to her afterwards, and I said, oh, you have a great voice, are you in the choir? We don't have a choir. What do you mean you don't have a choir at the school? I said to the superintendent, y'all need to get together, Bamberg 1, Bamberg 2. And the principal said, well, we don't have a piano. They got a piano now. Because we had a philanthropic group take a brand new, I thought they were going to take an old used upright, but oh no, they bought a brand new piano to take community volunteers who wanted to help. So you're right, the students will tell it like it is, like our friend Tony has told us tonight. So they inspire me, and they should inspire all of us, because those children, they don't care about district lines. They want to go to great schools that give them the opportunities that they need. And that's why when I listen to them, they say different things than the adults say. And I'm banking on them, that they have the courage and the hope that we need to push forward and take action.
All right, and with that, I have to end the night. Thank all of y'all for coming. We've gone over 30 minutes late, and y'all are still here. Fabulous. I do want to thank Panera Bread for sponsoring all these forums, and I want to thank USC for hosting. And by all means, please don't let this be a one-night event. Let's keep the conversation going. You can sign up to get involved in our Facebook page. I see SC for Ed out there. And by all means, contact your legislator.